Tony Khan's home for wayward WWE superstars grows as William Regal becomes All Elite. Swerve signs a contract and Oh yeah, and Revolution was a pretty damn good show too. It is time for a review, so subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos and reviews like this.
Support WrestleTalk!
Things at Revolution did kick off on the buy-in though, with legit Layla Hirsch putting a spanner in Chris Statlander's works to steal a win, Hook sending QT Marshall home with an L, and the House of Black making good on a wonky bill with a win over Death Triangle and my big brother, Eric Redbeard. Then the main card started off hot as all hell, with Eddie Kingston rushing to the ring to dump Chris Jericho on his head from a vicious German suplex. The insane pace of the start basically just didn't let up as both men continued the aggression to the point that even Aubrey Edwards was forced to get physical. Go on, Orbs, you deck him. Jericho pulled out his big guns here, landing a lion's salt knees first into Kingston's face. He hit a top rope Hurricane Rana and multiple code breakers, but Kingston managed to hold on, ducking out of a Judas effect to hit a pair of spinning back fists, followed by the stretch plum to pick up a victory that even he was surprised about. This is exactly what you want from an opener, by the way, and a heck of a way to put over Eddie Kingston, who so richly deserves this kind of shine. He fought hard, he was seriously puffed up around the eye by the end, and was still denied his handshake. That is just brilliant. After the intensity of the opener, it was time to bring things down a notch with the three-way fight for the AEW Tag Team Championships. Or was it bollocks? Because this is a three-way bout including the Young Bucks. It was flips and tricks and working over Jungle Boy to build to a couple of insane hot tags from Luchasaurus. I mean, insane, the guy's great. There was always a chance based on the build that Jurassic Express would get lost in the narrative as the Bucks and reDRagon worked through their issues by beating on Jungle Boy, but the young Mr. Perry got in some insane offense to wrench back the spotlight, including a shooting star press onto Kyle O'Reilly, who was scissored in a chancery on Luchasaurus. Scissored in a chancery. Tyler, your sex tape. The breakdown of the Bucks and reDRagon gave the champs the chance to hit the Jurassic Express for the win. It couldn't possibly escalate from here, right? Guess what, bitches? It did. Because the sextet of Keith Lee, Wardlow, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Starks, Orange Cassidy and Christian Cage put on a mad scramble for the Sonic the Hedgehog Memorial Trophy. Taking pride of place in this meat platter was the Hoss trio of Hobbs, Lee and Wardlow, who teased but never quite broke into the all-out brawl we all expected, instead being constantly interrupted by the smaller guys who got lobbed about for their troubles. Cassidy was the comedic core here as usual, pulling off inventive spots across the board, including an amazing skit with a ladder held up by Wardlow and Lee that seriously popped the crowd. Eventually though, the 3-ton trucks did collide as Wardlow barged Lee and Hobbs off the stage through some tables, buying him enough time to powerbomb Cage, and then Starked into a bridged ladder to claim the gold ring. Much nicer than that other ring he carries around. Honestly, this was a great moment and Wardlow was the perfect choice here. Before we crack on with the rest of the review though, we need to thank Superkick Nick Mazesko and Double L Liam Leonard for their support on Patreon. After that match, Tony Schiavone then tells us we have a live signing on the show as Swerve Strickland comes out to officially join AEW. I cannot wait for everything he's going to do here. It is Swerve's time. After that, Jade Cargill and Ty Conti come to blows for the TBS Championship. Both women did well here, but this didn't necessarily live up to its billing on the pay-per-view, especially as this bout was lacking in the build department. So then you've got Conti and Anna Jay fighting dirty throughout, giving Jade the chance to persevere and overcome the odds, hitting the Jaded for the victory after just 7-ish minutes. Realistically, both women continued to improve, Jade especially, who hit a great looking frog splash with a heck of a tuck in the middle, but yes, this did feel slightly out of place on the pay-per-view. Because it was followed up by Initials Warfare, as CM Punk took on MJF in a match that had a job ahead of it to live up to its build, which was a masterclass in emotional storytelling. And I'm kind of in two minds about whether it did really live up to the story. This was an all-out bloody war with plenty of interesting chain spots, thumbtacks, Punk bleeding profusely, the works, but it lacked that emotional dynamic that made the build such electric television. I mean, they definitely earned beating the tar out of each other with all of the promos backwards and forwards, but there was no tease of MJF being even slightly awed by sharing the ring with a former hero, no hints of Max shining through like that almost kayfabe breaking promo, and there was no confliction in Punk's merciless beating of MJF. There was no remorse for having to do this to a monster that he had a part in creating. And on top of all that, this felt like the the end of the feud as well, which is a shame, because this is the stuff that I want to see them dive into, because both men are such great talkers. It just feels like a shame to see this played so straight and violent. But as straight up bloody fights go, it was really fun. Punk came out in ROH inspired gear and to his old music after MJF swerved us all by cutting off Cult of Personality. Punk also worked over MJF's right hand throughout, the hand that he wouldn't shake and the one that MJF wears the Dynamite Diamond ring on. Not that he'd be getting to use that anyway, as MJF called out Wardlow for the assist close to the end of the match, but like a bad best man, Mr. Mayhem couldn't find it in his pockets, which gave Punk the chance to hit the go to sleep, and then Wardlow finds the ring. He hands it to Punk for the knockout blow, essentially turning face. Honestly, the Wardlow spot is so good. The crowd went crazy for it, and it sets up such good stuff for him with a TNT title shot coming up, and MJF going to be pissed at this betrayal here. This was really, really masterful work. The unenviable job of following that bloodbath were Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, who obviously have had their own stellar bloodbath in the last year. But this was a more straight-laced affair, and the chemistry was still strong for these two, but they struggled to truly get the crowd gassed for the fight, which is the difficulty when reheating a hot feud from a full year ago. Now Rosa took Britt to the limit. She kicked out of a stomp on a title belt, she got a visual pin from a tombstone at one point, and a tap out that was missed by the referee too because of distraction from Rebel. So the final stretch was basically a series of missed wins for Rosa when, I don't know, maybe the trigger should have just been pulled here and the belt put on her, because the shenanigans ultimately just fell flat as Britt eventually stomped her way to a successful defense. Though it does seem like another shot of the champ is coming up for Rosa if she can get past Layla Hirsch, so it does seem like the title change is on for San Antonio. That's fine, but it probably should have just happened here. After that, it was time for Jon Moxley to tackle Bryan Danielson's amateur wrestling chops with just regular chops and some kicks and punches. Because Bryan ramped up the viciousness here, legit kicking Mox in the jaw at one point and slowly transitioning from holds and catches into aggressive striking as he matched Moxley blow for blow, eventually leaving Mox busted open just as Bryan said he would be. Now the closing stretch saw Bryan coming in hot with a Psycho knee and stomps to the head, wearing Moxley out with this triangle sleeper and repeated blows to the temple, but a quick technical slip from Mox rolls through into a stolen pin. It's a great ending to a really good match as Mox steals it, but this was the Danielson show through and through. He ran rings around Moxley for a lot of it and took him to the absolute limit. He escaped by a whisker. Now post-match, a brawl breaks out as Bryan is pissed when William Regal emerges from the ramp and heads to the ring. Now you not, for me, this is probably the best debut that AEW have ever done, because William Regal gets between the pair, he slaps Mox, he slaps Bryan, and he forces them to shake hands. This trio, working together with some of the younger talent in AEW, gets a huge hell yes from me. Great match, great surprise at the end. So then it's time to bring things down a notch ahead of the main event, except that we won't be doing that because that's not the AEW way. Instead, we just get an insane arena-spanning brawl between the Hardy Family Office, Sammy Guevara, Sting and Darby Allin, plus Mark Quinn, The Butcher, and The Blade, who also all turned up at one point. Oh, and Jose was there as well. There was essentially no story here, it was just ridiculous spots. Darby diving into a binned man on a chair, check. Sammy hitting a Spanish fly from the set dressing onto the stage, check. Sting diving from the stands through 4 tables. Somehow, yeah, check. This was absolutely nuts, if not actually the palate cleanser it was meant to be. This was like having a Carolina Reaper between courses. After all the chaos in the crowd, Darby hit the Scorpion Death Drop, followed by the Coffin Drop on Matt for the 3. Good little match, a lot of fun, really stupid. And the thing is, with Darby's daredevil nature now rubbing off on 62-year-old Sting, are they going to be taking on Team Extreme if Jeff Hardy turns up in AEW? Because I can see it, and I kind of want it. I want it. Give it to me. And for the main event, we had the highest concentration of Adams in one place since What Culture, which led to some fun chants from the crowd. Let's go Adam, Adam sucks. Which was really fun, especially as you could expect them to run out of steam around the 5-hour mark. Paige and Cole put on a great match though, with Hangman nailing some big spots, but also coming a cropper to Cole's precision super kicks on more than one occasion. Cole built the Panama Sunrise as the move throughout the match, never quite landing it until the last stretch where he nails it and nails one on the outside, followed by a rapid lowering of the boom for a super close 2. There was another back and forth exchange that saw Paige slump to the floor as a way of avoiding another last shot, then a Deadeye through a table on the outside which summons the Dark Order to run off reDRagon. This gives Paige a chance to tie up Cole in the ropes, super kick, a lower of the boom from Paige himself, and a buckshot lariat to close it out. Hangman then shakes the unconscious Cole's hand to complete the Code of Honor. Ultimately, this was a great main event that managed to keep the energy high and the crowd invested even as we reached the 5-hour mark for those who would watch the buy-in. I think ultimately Revolution managed to stay the course for AEW with no major title switches but plenty of impactful matches between veteran and growing stars, 2 big debuts, and Wardlow's face turn coming on the same night he wins the Face of the Revolution being the real story to write home about. It's a moment that yet again proves that AEW's investment in growing their talent does pay off, and there is likely room for hot new signees to come in, have their dream matches, and not swallow up the homegrown talent. Because Kingston, MJF, Wardlow, Jurassic Express all came out of this show looking like stars. That is 4 stars. There's 5 stars in, because Jurassic Express is 2 people, but 4 stars is what I'm giving the show. 4 stars.
In its short history, AEW has definitely been enabling WWE with its release addiction, hoovering up all the lovely Keith Lees that the big dub have been shedding. However, Khan has said in recent months there will come a time in the near future where several AEW contracts will need to expire as the roster is getting a little bloated. While it isn't clear when the first batch of contracts are set to expire, it appears as though we may have seen a quiet release earlier this week.